Welcome to the Maria Liberati Show, where food meets art, travel, and life. So, what does food mean to you? Well, today's special guest is Tim Lopez. He is a chef, a culinary instructor, and he was the chef for the Philadelphia Eagles. And he has an interesting book that, it's perfect for the upcoming tailgating season and football season, but with a twist. So stay tuned for Tim Lopez, and he's going to tell us about his new book. And before we get started on the interview with Tim Lopez, I also wanted to tell you what the top 10 local foods are by the U.S. city, because Tim will be talking about some really interesting local foods that I don't think anyone's heard about from some of the cities that the football teams are from. But anyway, here are my top 10 local foods by U.S. cities. So New Orleans is gumbo, which if you've never heard of gumbo, it's a rich stew that blends French, African, and Creole influences. It often has seafood, sausage, and okra in it. Chicago is deep dish pizza, thick, cheesy, and saucy, baked in a pan with a buttery crust. Philadelphia, cheesesteak, thinly sliced beef, melted cheese, and onions on a hoagie roll. And for those vegetarians like me, there are some great places in Philly that make a really yummy vegetarian Philly cheesesteak. And I have to mention the Philly pretzel, the Philly soft pretzel, because there are imitators around the country, but no one makes a pretzel, a soft pretzel, like they do in Philly. Then in New York City, bagels with lox and schmear. This is a classic Jewish American breakfast staple, often served with smoked salmon and cream cheese. In Los Angeles, it's the Korean barbecue tacos. This is a fusion of Korean flavors and Mexican street food, born from LA's food truck scene. Austin, Texas, breakfast tacos, soft tortillas filled with eggs, cheese, and local meats, an everyday Texan favorite. In San Francisco, it's the Mission-style burrito. These are oversized burritos packed with rice, beans, meat, and salsa, wrapped in foil. In Portland, Maine, it's the lobster roll, fresh lobster meat tossed in butter or mayo, served in a toasted bun. In Houston, Texas, it's the Viet Cajun crawfish. So this is a spicy, garlicky twist on traditional crawfish, reflecting Houston's Vietnamese community. And in Boston, clam chowder. Oh, yummy, creamy soup with clams, potatoes, and onions, best enjoyed with oyster crackers. Each dish tells a story of migration, innovation, and local pride for those towns. If you know of another local dish from a city that I did not mention, please share it with us on social media, hashtag the Maria Liberati Show. And stay tuned for Tim Lopez and more food talk. And my special guest today is Tim Lopez. He is the author of Kickoff Kitchen. Tim, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you very much for the opportunity to talk about my book.
Sure. And I just have to say, I can't believe that we're already at this time again for tailgating and football season and everything. But obviously, you can use your book any time of the year. But
You definitely can.
now is a really pertinent time. So, Tim is, I'm sorry, I didn't mention, Tim is an author, a teacher, right? Culinary teacher, and a
That's correct.
chef also.
Yep.
And he came up with the idea for this. So, how did you get the idea for this Kickoff Kitchen book?
Well, I had a unique perspective on the NFL. I worked for the Philadelphia Eagles for close to 15 years as a first cook on the front line for the
Uh-huh.
coaches and the players and the support staff.
Uh-huh.
And when I was there, myself and another chef had come up with an idea that we called Devour the Competition,
Right.
where we took a look at the regional cuisines of all the other teams and all the other cities and states that they're from,
Uh-huh.
and really try to get inside, like, that culture, that food culture, and get inside those fans' heads by
Right.
kind of consuming what they eat. So that's how that kind of idea was born. That was something we did at the Eagles. Every week we would cook something just once a week, not all week long. We wouldn't feature the other team's foods for a whole week, just one day, like during a lunch period.
Right.
And we'd call it Devour the Competition. And then when the publishing company came to me, I mean, I haven't been with the Eagles for about more than 5 years now.
Uh-huh.
They came to me and they said, would you be interested in doing a regional cuisine cookbook? And I'm like, I we've kind of already done a little bit of the mental legwork for it, but then
Uh-huh.
I had to delve in and really kind of update the classic regional cuisines of all of these different teams and do research. And I cold called a lot of different restaurants. I was on food blogs. I talked to
Uh-huh.
podcasters and
Wow.
influencers and YouTube
Uh-huh.
personalities and really got inside these recipes, these regional recipes that really give us a flavor of
Right.
the different parts of the NFL. So,
Yes, and what I love too about the book, besides the recipes are really delicious. But I also love that regional feel because I know people go to Europe and they always talk about, oh, different regions have their different specialties, but in the
mhm.
USA they don't realize our different regions also do have different specialties as well. And I love it that you're bringing that out in the book, the regional cuisine of the different areas that each football team is from, right?
Yeah,
That's what
absolutely.
it
I
sounds
mean,
like.
one thing
I
I
love
want
that.
people to know about this book, and I think the most important thing is this is not a basic like tailgate game day cookbook.
Right,
This is really getting into those, like we're talking about regional cuisine. That's exactly what it is. It's the food
right.
culture of these towns, of these cities,
Exactly.
of these fan bases. Something you
Exactly.
might be able to get for, the Denver Broncos, you wouldn't eat the same way down in Jacksonville, Florida. So everything is researched and those recipes are tested by me and
Right.
written by me,
Uh-huh.
so that fans can cook for any team they root for.
Right. And it's so you're basically, I guess I could call it a foodie trip through the football teams.
Yeah,
So,
pretty much.
exactly right. A foodie trip through the football teams, through the different teams, which is pretty cool. I really like the way that you did that. So I'm in Philly. I know you worked for the Eagles for a while. What's a specialty? I'm thinking of cheesesteaks, pretzels. What's a regional specialty here in Philly?
Well, the one thing I knew about Philadelphia is I could have put a recipe in for a cheesesteak, but no one's ever going to agree. Whatever
Uh-huh. Right.
recipe is in any cookbook, that's
Right.
the one way to make a cheesesteak. So I
Right.
stayed away from them as a entree or a sandwich option, and I
Uh-huh.
rolled them into a spring roll for an appetizer. A lot of restaurants in Philly feature those.
Yes.
There's a really good one called the Continental that's near Old City
Yes.
in Philadelphia. They have the best cheesesteak spring rolls. So I put that in as an appetizer. And then
Yes.
for the Philly entree, I went with the best sandwich in the country. It was like 5 years running, and that's the Philly roast pork sandwich.
Oh, yes.
Very Philadelphia, very classic. I like to
Uh-huh.
think like we're known for cheesesteaks around the country,
We
but
are.
that sandwich has a lot more of a connection to our Italian roots than a cheesesteak does in Philadelphia.
Exactly.
And I've been to Nick's, I've been to John's Roast Pork,
Uh-huh.
and I have a huge good relationship with the Reading Terminal Market. And I just kind of leaned into that and I said, okay, we like to once again, you put a cheesesteak in the book, everybody's expecting that. I want to feature that roast pork sandwich because if you
Right.
do it right and you do it classically, it's an amazing sandwich. It's one of my favorite in the world.
Yes. Well, we do have good food in Philly. I have to say that,
Amen. Amen.
yes, Philly is a great food town. So, of course, we're prejudiced to Philly because, we're in Philly, but what would be your next? Can we say, is there like a next favorite? Do you have a next favorite town, regional or regional area, regional cuisine to the Philly
Well, I
cuisine?
grew up in upstate New York, so I grew up in
There
enemy
you go.
territory. I was in Giants and Jets country. I
Yes.
never really was a Giants or Jets fan, but that was the hardest region for me to come up with because, as most NFL fans know, they share a stadium in East Rutherford, New Jersey, and
Oh,
it's
yeah.
really hard to pinpoint because there's two New York teams,
Right.
specific regional food for both of those teams.
Right.
You get a lot more Jets fans in upstate New York. A lot more
Uh-huh.
Giants fans tend to be down closer to New York City.
Uh-huh.
However, there's also Buffalo, so I couldn't intrude into the upstate area because then I would kind of take away some fire from Buffalo. So what I
Abs-
did in the book is I said, let me lean into some basic like North Jersey and New York foods that
Uh-huh.
are classic. So for the Jets, I did some little sliders that are pork roll, egg, and cheese, which is huge in the North Jersey and Southern New York area.
Yes.
And I leaned into, for the Giants, we did a chopped cheese, which is essentially like a New York style cheesesteak, except they don't use steak, they use ground beef. And they
Uh-huh.
chop it up like a steak and they melt cheese into it and combine it, put it on a roll, and it's wonderful. A lot of people say, well,
Yes.
why don't you just put New York pizza? I say, because I'm going to fall into that trap again that no one can agree on who's got the best pizza. And I certainly don't have the end all be all recipe for pizza. So
Right,
I
right.
leaned into those different things for the Giants and the Jets. And
Uh-huh.
I think there's an appetizer for the Giants in there, and there's an entree for the Jets. It escapes me right now, but that was a bigger challenge than say like thinking about food from Denver or food from Kansas City. A lot of those foods stand right out to you when you do a little research. They just
Right.
pop up. People
Oh,
are like, oh,
really?
if you go to Denver, you have to have this. You go to Kansas City, you have to try the
So
ribs or whatever. So.
what's a big thing in, because I'm not really familiar, unfortunately, I am familiar with some regional cuisine, but like I wouldn't have a clue. Denver. So what pops out in Denver? What's like a
So
big,
Denver does a chili. It's a
uh,
green, they call it chili verde, and they do it with pork. They don't do it with beef. And
okay.
it's unlike any other kind of chili
Uh-huh.
in the country because of the way they cook it down. They cook it down low and slow where the pork is not a ground pork. It's kind of like what you would use for pulled pork where it falls apart and it
Uh,
shreds into this chili. And it's
uh-huh.
got this green pepper that grows locally. Sometimes people will use hatch chilies from New Mexico, and it's a hotbed of debate. I found a lot of debates around these foods. That was one of the most interesting things when I was doing the research of people saying, you can't make it with this pepper. You have to have only these peppers. It's like, well, I
Uh-huh.
put peppers in from New Mexico. Then it's not a Denver chili. So that is chili pork verde is huge in Denver. That is a big
Huh.
thing out there.
Wow. And
And
Kansas
then
City? Oh, go ahead. No,
can
no, go ahead.
Kansas
Finish.
City, we got some. There's Tennessee. No, that's Tennessee Titans. On Kansas City, I did burnt end sandwich in
Oh,
Kansas
and what
City
is
that they
that?
do with brisket. So burnt ends is something that came up in barbecue years and years and years ago. You would have the ends of the brisket that were a little bit harder cooked,
Oh,
and they would coat them in sauce and put them back in the smoker, and the sauce would caramelize on the ends of this cut of meat, and then
uh-huh.
you would chop them up and make a sandwich out of them. My
Uh,
recipe takes the whole brisket and turns it into burnt ends because you were cooking for a crowd. You don't want to just use the side cuts off of the brisket. So I made a burnt end sandwich for Kansas City, and they have a wonderful appetizer called cheesy corn, and
uh-huh.
it's kind of like a
What is
queso
that?
blended with fresh sweet corn, and they
Oh,
bake
wow.
it kind of like a dip, and then they eat it with tortilla chips, and it's amazing.
Oh,
It's really, really good. So anybody who loves corn is going to really love that one.
that sounds amazing. And that's like a kind of a locally thing that you would find in Kansas City about
Absolutely,
that.
yeah. You find that on a lot of times on game day they'll eat it. It's on a lot of dinner tables when they do big meals together. There's always that Kansas City cheesy corn dip.
Oh, wow. Very interesting. Yeah,
I found out a interesting thing about this country. We have a lot of sausage and hot dog recipes. We have a ton of chili recipe. A
huh.
ton of like not only that
Wow.
chili pork verde
Right.
stands out, but
I see you have another
Cincinnati has it.
chili. You have another chili in here called, is
Yeah,
it Skyline chili?
Skyline chili from Cincinnati. That's the one I was
Oh,
going to
there
get
you
to. Yeah.
go.
And nobody eats chili like Skyline chili. It's completely different from any other chili you've ever had. They serve it over spaghetti,
I was
and then
gonna
they top it
say,
with about 2 pounds of shredded cheddar, like really finely shredded. And you
right?
can eat it. That's called a two-way, right? Where
Uh-huh.
you have it with the spaghetti and the cheese. But you can eat it as a five-way. Five-way's got spaghetti, cheese, onions, beans, and crackers on it. And they
Oh,
mix it all together and they eat it.
oh,
And I've never had a chili like that. When I was with the Eagles, there was a tight end there,
uh-huh.
wonderful Eagles player, really good player, Brent Selleck.
Uh-huh.
And he asked me to do Skyline chili, and I said I've never made it before, so he brought me in his grandmother's recipe.
Uh-huh.
And I was able to work from that, and that was a real deal Cincinnati old school recipe for that chili. And elements of that recipe wound up in my final recipe in the cookbook. So
That's
shout out to Brent Selleck and his grandmom.
yeah.
Thanks for the inspiration.
Definitely. Wow, really, really interesting. I love it that it's a great way for people to find out about, as we mentioned, the cuisine from our different regions in the US, because most people have no clue. They just think food is food and everybody eats the same. But really, I mean, we do, but there's a lot of recipes just you're telling us that if you haven't traveled to those areas, you probably have not experienced or even aware of. So I love it that it's a really neat way to experience the cuisine of the US through football teams. Really, really neat. Way to
Thank you.
combine love of football and food. Great idea. So you got the idea by the publishing company just came to you and asked you to create this regional cuisine book. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, out of the blue too. I
Oh
was at a
wow.
I was at a roller skating rink. My wife was teaching my son to roller skate, and I got
Uh-huh.
an email, just a cold call email from this publishing company, and then they had listened to a podcast I did when I was with the Eagles called Feeding the Birds.
Uh-huh.
And the editor was a huge Birds fan, and she said,
Uh,
we think that you would be the perfect person to write this cookbook because I got a lot into the food culture of the players and the teams when I was with the Birds. So I not only worked and fed them, but I interviewed them and I learned more about the food culture of Philly and the food culture of all the players and where they came from. And
uh-huh.
at the time I was there, I left in 2020, but I was there from 2009 all the way up through 2020.
Uh-huh.
Actually, no, I'm sorry, 2005 to 2020.
Uh-huh.
So
Wow.
I it meant a lot to me to get into what these guys like to eat, what they needed to eat, because I
Uh-huh.
believe that, when you understand the food culture
Uh-huh.
of a people, you really understand more about who they are. And this is my soundbite that I tell all the podcasts, but I love it. So I'm going to say it to you.
Go ahead.
Um, there are two ways we experience any culture before we even understand their language, and that's through
Uh-huh.
their food and their music. And so if you taste food that people are used to eating, that they grew up eating, that they were taught to cook by, their grandparents and older people in their family. It's a regional connection, but it's also a family connection. It's a historical connection because a lot of these foods came from the other countries, from the immigrants coming in. And food culture really tells us a lot about not only why we eat what we eat, but about who we are and what we're connected to. So I
Exactly.
believe it's a great way, and this book is a great way to connect to other teams and other parts of the country through experiencing these different foods.
Exactly. I love it. I love that. That's so right on just what you said. It's absolutely correct. I think not enough people realize how connected food is to culture and where you learn like you said, you learn about someone knowing the type of food they like and the type of music, their history and everything. I love that. That is definitely such a spot on philosophy.
Thank you.
Really. Yes, very good philosophy. So I do ask my guests sometimes if they're really into food, which definitely you are, what food means to you. I ask you to tell our audience. So what would you say if I said, what does food mean to you?
Uh, well, I'm going to say there's two answers to that. I mean, to
Uh-huh.
me, first and foremost, it's sustenance and a connection. Like you have to feed your family and eat with them. When you're parents, you have to raise your kids and you want to feed them right, give them the right nutrition. You need the food for the energy to get through your days. But the second thing for me, it's a wider connection to different worlds because all these different cuisines. I mean, I just delved into regional cuisine in the United States, but if you get into regional cuisine in different countries, I just got back from Scotland,
Uh-huh.
and a lot
Oh,
of people think
wow.
it's just all fried food over there, but there's different types of things around the country in the UK. If you go to Spain, the different regions of Spain produce different food. You definitely see it in Italy. I know you spent some time in the Emilia Romagna region and you got into
Right.
the way that Pecorino Romano was created. And you get to see these different regions, and it really speaks about the people and how they're connected to the land, how you're connected to the produce and the protein that's available to you, the grains. And food just means so much to me because of that connection. I think you can build relationships through food. Anthony Bourdain said one of the best things you could ever do to get to know people is to sit down and have a meal with them, because understanding comes through the conversation you have when you're having a meal. And
Exactly.
I firmly believe that.
Wow.
I try to do that with my students. I try to understand their food culture, have them
Uh-huh.
understand the foods I'm teaching them about, and then I wanted them to take their understanding of food and give me a reflection of what I've taught them and use the skills to provide a whole different way of looking at things. We do something with our kids at Mastbaum High School in Philadelphia
Okay.
called the Ramen Challenge, because all of our students eat ramen noodles. It's something
Ramen.
we've all had before.
Yes,
And they
yes.
take cultural foods and cultural recipes and put that kind of twist on the dish of ramen. And then
Uh-huh.
I do a little competition with them. We give them prizes and they come up with amazing things, and they kind of inject their culture into that dish, which is it's a primarily Japanese dish, but it started in China. So it's
Right,
fun to
right.
see like a beef birria ramen or
Oh,
like a
yeah.
Russian borscht ramen, and see the connections that the kids are making with their own food background and how they,
Yes.
put that twist on that food. So
That food. Oh, that's great. I love it. That's wonderful. Wonderful. I was just going to ask where you are teaching. So Mass Bomb. Yes.
yep, Math
Yes.
Bomb's in Kensington.
Yes.
And it's the first CTE school that was
Uh-huh.
ever built in the city of Philly. It was built as part of the WPA program with President Roosevelt,
Uh-huh.
and we're still going strong. We're the oldest CTE school in the city.
CT meaning what
CTE
does
means career and technical education.
Oh, okay.
So we
Yes.
have different shops, right? We have automotive, carpentry, welding, electrical. We have two nursing shops. One's on the paperwork end. The other
Mhm.
one's on taking blood pressure and doing
Right.
different types of things nurses would do. We have graphic design, we have business marketing, and we have culinary arts. And I'm
Wow.
very proud of our program. We are the largest program in the building. We have 100 students in the program this coming
Wow.
year. And I have
Uh-huh.
a partner teacher I work with, and we help these kids get jobs in the industry and get internship experience. And hopefully, they're the next generation of chefs. We really want to give them all the
Definitely.
tools they need to be successful. So
Exactly. That's great. That's great. Tim, tell us, we're almost out of time, but I want to the interview is really amazing. I love interviewing you. Tell
thank you.
everybody where they can find. So has the book been released?
The book is officially released. It's on pre-order right now, but it's officially
Oh,
released on August 26th. So it's coming up.
okay. Okay.
You can find it on barnesandnoble.com. You can find it on amazon.com. If you do a search for it, just like a regular Google search, there's a couple other outlets where you can purchase it. But
Uh-huh.
I've been pretty much setting a lot of people up with the Barnes and Noble and Amazon. Also, because you're a local podcast,
Right.
there's a book signing coming up at
Tell us
at
where.
Bindings. Bindings is a cookbook store
Yeah.
down in the Italian market across from DeBruno Brothers,
Is
and
it
they only sell
really?
cookbooks. And I'm
Uh-huh.
going to be interviewed, and I'll be doing book signings there on
Uh-huh.
August 28th, which is a Thursday. So if
Yes.
anybody wants to come out, if you pay a certain fee, you can get a copy of the book with your
Uh-huh.
ticket to the event.
Mm-hmm.
There's information on my Instagram. There's information available online. But if you go to Binding's website, it's listed on there as well.
Okay.
And that should be a pretty interesting night. I'm gonna be interviewed there. We're gonna talk about a lot of stuff that we just talked about.
Yes.
Talk about the food culture of Philadelphia. I'll share some stories from working for the Eagles for 15 years. So
Yes.
that's always a good thing. I'm
Oh,
gonna
that
bring my
sounds
Super
great.
Bowl ring. I got a Super Bowl ring. I'll bring that too. So
That's great. Oh, that's wonderful. That's good. And it's a chance to get in down to the Italian market also, which is always a fun
absolutely.
trip, fun and delicious trip. So that's great, Tim. Much success with the book and stay
Thank
in touch. Hopefully we'll have you back in the near future.
thank you very
Thanks.
much, Maria. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for being on. Thanks for listening to the Maria Liberati Show, and thanks as always to my producer, Britton Roselle, and this week's special guest. And remember, if you have a favorite local dish or food from your town that was not mentioned on today's show, please share it with us and hashtag it the Maria Liberati Show on social media. And next week, we will be doing all about mushrooms, a show all about mushrooms. We're going to have an educator and a forager that will be telling us a lot of interesting facts about mushrooms. So stay tuned for that interview. That's coming up next week. And as always, you can find me at marialiberati.com, on Instagram at Maria Liberati, on Facebook at Chef Maria Liberati, on Twitter at Maria Liberati, on Vimeo at Maria Liberati, our YouTube channel called The Maria Liberati Show, on Pinterest at Maria Liberati, and my Gourmand World award-winning book series, The Basic Art of Italian Cooking. You can find those books on Amazon and Kindle, and Amazon has just released audio versions of some of my books a few weeks ago, so you can check out the audio versions of some of my books as well. You can also find the books on the publisher's website at artoflivingprimamedia.com or barnesandnoble.com, or really anywhere books are sold. And until next time, peace, love, and pasta.